Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Yes, welcome to the lunchtime Q&A session. Yeah, I'll try that again. Really happy to see so many people looking to fit study back into their schedules and reaching out to us about how best to do that. To start off, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Arlen. My primary role is to assist people in their original enrollment into the MBA, which includes a bit of an assessment as to whether an MBA is the right choice for their particular career goals. My partner in crime here with me is Chauntelle. She is far more useful to you than I could ever be, as her role is as an enrollment advisor, actually helping to facilitate and support students with their ongoing enrollment. So, first off, before we start, please allow me to direct your attention to the question box at the top right of the screen. This is where the primary interaction is going to be unfolding. Feel free to drop in a question for us to answer as we have a bit of a chat about the MBA. Believe me, there are no silly questions. We're happy to talk about anything that concerns you. Fortunately, we won't just sit here in silence as we wait for somebody to drop something in. We do have some questions people have already asked in their registration. So without any further ado, we'll jump into those right now. But as we're going through them, feel free to add any of the stuff we're talking about in the question box, and we'll do our best to keep up with all of it. So um, we'll jump into the first one now. I realize also, just as a quick aside, that this webinar is listed for 1 hour. We may not need all of that time. This sort of Q&A format is in its infancy at the moment, so we're not sure exactly how long it's going to take. Hopefully, we won't need a whole hour of your time, especially if this really is at your lunchtime. So the first question here, which I think most of these are probably going to be primarily directed towards Chauntelle as an enrollment advisor. So I do apologize, Chauntelle, for making you carry the brunt of these questions. But the first one is, how many hours should be allocated to study? So I think it's a fairly solid question, and it does probably change for everybody. It really depends on how much engagement you're looking to get out of study. Some people just want to rip off the band-aid and get their MBA, which is fair enough. Other people are looking for a lot more from their study experience. So what would you say your experience has been, Chauntelle, regarding sort of how many hours, I guess, per week is probably a good measure of how the MBA.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. So generally, we do recommend most students say around the 15 to 20 hours per week mark. Like you mentioned, Arlen, that can vary a fair bit, or not a fair bit, a little bit. Some students, can spend more time if they want to, and really sort of go through and do every reading, do extra readings, do extra if they want to. So they may take a little bit more time each week. Other students say that they can get it done in a little bit less than 15, so it really just depends. But yeah, definitely around that 15 to 20 hours per week mark would be what you'd be looking at.
Yeah, I think that's fair. 15 to 20, I can see that's the official answer. I have heard some more informal, the unofficial answer of being, maybe it doesn't take quite that long. Some people really just look at the assessment, skim through the materials for what's relevant, and type something up and call it a day. That's definitely not 20 plus hours, but yeah, it really depends, especially as you pick different subjects, so one subject might be incredibly relevant to you and you need all of that information. Others you're not as interested in and you just want to get them as a pass and you're just moving on with your life. That's completely fair. So moving on from that, the second question is, what kind of help does AIB provide to students? So this question is really significant. And there is a fairly long-winded answer to this that I'll try not to bore you with, but a big reason why a lot of people come to AIB is because, well, they experience something similar to what I experienced, which is a lecture theatre full of about 600 students, and the odds of you actually speaking to your professor being very slim. So when it comes to studying with AIB, what we offer in terms of help, I mean that's not just speaking to your professor and having the opportunity to have a one-on-one with your teacher or your subject coordinator, but also sort of the more ancillary roles in the academic structure that we offer. So we do have a few people that are there to help with specific things like referencing or understanding all the different tools that we offer you. And there is an extensive list. But also, we have two support teams. We've got the Student Central team, who there are no silly questions that you can ask them. They're incredibly friendly, thank goodness. But if you don't know where to go, they'll help you out. We've got the enrollment advisors like Chauntelle, and they're really there to sort of not just help you with your timetable or your enrollment, but also to point you towards the right support people, and something that I didn't have when I first studied, which is be a bit of a drill sergeant. Is kind of a dual role between being a drill sergeant and a cheerleader, having that person to say, like, hey, don't quit, you can do this, and sometimes that means the difference between getting an MBA and not getting an MBA. And it seems silly, but it's massive. So we can definitely point you towards a more specific list of all the things that we provide to all AIB students. But it may be best to speak to your enrollment advisor about what specifically you need. Guaranteed, we do have it. We do have some kind of tool that'll sort of expedite the learning process for you. Or we have a person who you can speak to if you're not feeling confident or you haven't studied in a while, which is a lot of us. And we're definitely always more than happy to sort of direct you to those people. So it's not an extensive, exhaustive answer that I'm giving you, but definitely speak to your enrollment advisor like Chauntelle. So we have another question here just about specializations. Really interested to hear this myself, Chauntelle. If you can maybe cover this for me, because I haven't done a specialized MBA and you've seen thousands of students who have. So can you tell me a bit more about, I guess, why would you specialize and why shouldn't you specialize if you're not going to, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a question that we get all the time from our students. So we do offer the specializations. However, most students do our general or generic MBA. And what that means is that you can choose a mixture of the elective subjects. And essentially, you're not pigeonholing yourself into a particular area. So the core subjects of the MBA are always the same, whether you specialise or whether you do the general MBA. But say, for instance, you're looking to move your career into a particular area, or you are definitely looking just to stick with one sort of area. So, for instance, human resources is one of the specialisations that we do offer. So if you're looking to move into that area or you already work in it and you're not planning to move out of that area in the future, then that's when I would recommend, yes, specialise your MBA in human resource management. That's going to work really well for you. But a lot of the time I do sort of recommend students keep it open so that they've got that flexibility and they can choose a range of elective subjects. But we do have the specialisations available so that you can certainly specialise in an area that is right for you. But yeah, definitely have a chat with your enrolment advisor and we can help you to determine whether you should specialise or whether you probably shouldn't. So yeah.
Yeah, it is often a very specific situation. You're very right that it may not always be a good idea to specialize. Just because you want to stay in one industry doesn't mean you should pigeonhole yourself. You never know when a career pivot is coming. Especially if you caught our last webinar surrounding all the industry leaders who did exactly that. You definitely want to follow in their footsteps. But it can be nice to be stuck in an industry, specialize, and move to a different industry. So I think that's all really valid and worth having a discussion about. So just the next question here, a really good question, and it looks like the primary reason a lot of people come to AIB. Is it possible to study an MBA with a full-time job and 3 children? So short answer is yes. I actually am remembering, I think it was a valedictorian from 3 years ago who had, I think, 5 kids and he did some concurrent study and was also traveling through the entire MBA. So she did it in less than 2 years. It was incredible. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Please, please don't take that as a recommendation. But absolutely, yes. So it is designed for people who are too busy to do an MBA. It's trying to get across that catch-22 of, if you're interested in doing an MBA, you're probably at a point advanced in your career where you're too busy to do one. So you don't. And that's where AIB was born, is just from realizing that people only have an hour here and there after work. And getting an MBA from that is pretty cool. Even if it does take a couple of years, and you're not running around classrooms like the student experience you expected when you were a teenager. It is the best way to do it. And the average age of our students is about 45. This is not a bunch of people fresh out of high school. It's people who did some original study, went and made as much money as possible, and then now they're trying to capitalize and raise that ceiling a little bit further. And that's really what we're here for. So Chauntelle, you would deal with a lot of very, very, very busy students. Would you say that the MBA is something worth doing while you have 3 kids and full-time job?
Yes, definitely. So to be honest, majority of our students have families, other commitments. Demanding full-time jobs is 90% of the people that I speak with and support every day. And I can really relate to that myself. I'm in my mid-40s, I work full-time, I have a couple of kids. It gets very busy. But the way that our MBA is designed is to fit around a busy life, a full-time job, and all the other commitments that come along with that. So there's a lot of things that AIB have designed our online study to sort of work around that. So you can just do, 1 to 2 hours a day during the week, and then a few hours sort of on the weekend as well. We have tools available that also support this for students. So for instance, one thing is we have our audiobooks, so you can listen to the readings, the textbooks, while you're traveling to and from work. You can utilize that time. We have so many tools available. You can now use AI correctly, which can help with time as well when you're completing your assessments. We have, so many ways that it can really sort of just try and fit it in around everything else, and you can do it. We speak to students all the time that are so busy, have families, have so many other commitments, and I'm not saying it's easy. Getting an MBA is not easy, but it's definitely doable, and we do have, some of those tools available to help you. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a really good point. When you mentioned AI and some of the tools we provide, there is an extensive list, and I know I did briefly touch on this, but I can see a few questions in the chat that are sort of, they have a bit of a theme to them. Tips on how to juggle study load and my full-time job. How do I find assistance with essay writing and referencing? How do we manage the weeks? Do you have any tips for someone with a very demanding job? So the answer to all of these is it has layers to it. It depends how much time you have and making the most of that time. So I think something that's really worth looking at is the tools for study section on the portal, which has a pretty long list, and some of those really kind of expedite the study process. So if you're like me and you jumped into the portal for the first time and you were looking at leadership, and then you spent like 6 hours in there and you didn't get anything done. This is this is the place for you if you're anything like me. And it's kind of like, okay, great. I can use AI to start off with a jumping off point, so I'm not just staring at a blank page. I can then get all the references, exported from the answer that it gave me. I can speak to the academic skills advisor about where the usage of AI is appropriate and I won't be penalized for it. And I can make sure I'm using the correct in-text referencing and the bibliography that we need. And we have EndNote to do all that referencing for you. So it's kind of just quickening the pace a little bit. So, starting off somewhere, using EndNote to do all the referencing for you so you're not spending time doing it yourself, talking to an academic skills advisor who makes sure that your assessment is formatted correctly and you're not spending hours trying to fix it up. And they're also maximizing your grade. So you don't put all this incredible work and content into an assessment and then get a somewhat disappointing grade because it's not formatted or referenced correctly. That's nice. And then running it past your learning facilitator, your professor, subject coordinator, and making sure that all the content looks like it's going in the right direction. It's what they asked for. They're the ones who are marking your assessment, so they're a good person to speak to, and make sure that every single time you study a subject, you do speak to them at least once, because it just seems like such a wasted resource to not take advantage of that. Like I know that when I was first studying, that was such a frustration for me, is I just wanted to ask a few more questions after the webinar, and if I couldn't make it, too late, that was it. Whereas you might just watch the recording of a webinar and you might I will just follow up with my teacher to be like, hey, I've got a few more questions, and they're happy to do that, and that's really nice. So I saw a question that says, how do we manage the weeks? I noted in some previous subjects, it almost felt like we had to do everything before the week even started. And that's a really, really good question. And people seem to sort of study differently. So it may be useful to you to do the entire module and then go to the webinar at the start of the week, and you can talk about all the stuff you learned. Even though it might seem like you need to do that, you don't. It's worth just jumping into the webinar and asking all these questions about the material you're being presented with, and then carry on with your week normally. Don't feel pressured to have to learn everything before you show up to a webinar. And that's where those one-on-ones with the OLF or the subject coordinator or whoever your professor is really come in handy. So definitely take it at your own pace. That would be the underlying takeaway here. So I hope that helps a little bit. Always deferring to the academic staff that you have on hand. So just jumping back into the list of questions we received prior to the webinar. So is there any assistance for someone who has taken a long break from study to get back into it? So I am going to be lazy again and say that your enrollment advisor is your biggest ally here. I wouldn't be speaking to anybody else. Chauntelle, what would you recommend if you haven't studied for a year or two? What's the first step?
Yeah, so I think one of the first steps that we would recommend to students is there has been, some updates in our orientation module, and I would just say jump back into orientation and go back through that, or go back through the parts that have been updated or that you're not 100% sure on things. That is a really great place to start. Orientation will take you through everything and guide you through, and I think that's probably a really good starting point. Chat with your enrolment advisor. We can, determine with you what is it that you're not feeling confident about in resuming study, what areas you feel like you might have gaps in, and then we can direct you to the correct support or the correct person. So there is a lot of support available, as Arlen has just mentioned, a lot of those, and myself. We can definitely have a chat with you if you're feeling, I'm not sure, or it's been a long time since I've studied, or I've had a long break from when I've done my last subject. I'm feeling a little bit, not very confident with restarting. Have a chat to your enrolment advisor. Myself and my colleagues, that's what we're here for. And any support that you need, any gaps you feel you have, we can certainly fill those in for you. Yeah.
I think that's definitely a good place to start. I know a lot of people, may be returning after a couple of years away, and that just happens. Like, no one is going to judge you for that. Life will get in the way. That's part of an MBA. And I think going back to orientation is a really good idea, because if there are a few people who are, maybe what I'm describing, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about this list of tools for study. We didn't have them, a few years ago. So definitely jumped into orientation and speak to the learning resources officer that we have solely for that reason, to explain how to use them and teach you. And speak to your enrollment advisor, because they'll direct you to the right people. So I'm gonna keep interrogating you, Chauntelle. I'm sorry. There's a question here that says how to stay motivated to study. I'm finding it hard now with all of my end of year commitments and the Christmas break coming up. I can definitely relate.
Yes, it is a really difficult time, I think, at the moment. A lot of students we're speaking to, I think, are feeling a little bit overwhelmed at this time of year. There's lots of functions on, there's Christmas, there's the holidays. Term 6, which starts on the 18th of October, it does finish, the very first week of December. So that, I think, I've found, eases students' minds as well. You've still got a good few weeks before Christmas. But yeah, how to stay motivated. If you're struggling, speak to your enrolment advisor. We're here to cheer you on. We're here to keep you going. We're here to, boost you up. If you're not sure, if you can do it, have a chat with us. Why is it that you're not sure? Is it that you need a little bit of help with scheduling, your study around? The academic skills advisors can also help you with scheduling your study and around your lifestyle. They're really great at that too. There's, depending on what it is that you're needing. If you're in a bit of a pickle and you find that you just need, a couple more days for your assessment, reach out to us or Student Central, and we can certainly, try and accommodate that for you, just to help you get through. Or we might need to pass you on to, one of our support staff. There's definitely ways to keep on going and push through. But yeah, reach out to your enrolment advisor, and we're definitely here to help you get through.
I've definitely heard some motivational speeches coming from the enrollment advisors department when I walk past. Seriously good at their job. And I think the reason why there's such good motivation is not just because they're great speakers or something strange like that. It's because they've seen the power of an MBA. Something that's when you're working at AIB, you really see the value in the product, because it's when someone comes to you and says, I really want an MBA because this is really frustrating. I've been in the same middle management role for 15 years and it's getting old. Seeing them before they even finish their MBA actually achieve that goal because of the study they did it's pretty wholesome, and it's very heartwarming. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm thinking about quitting," we're like, "No, you're so close. You will get this dream achieved. Like, you really got to give it a go. Think about why you started doing this. You will achieve it." Like, we have an insights report that I can link, which is the survey results for everybody who did their MBA and what happened. And we did not hold anything back. We included all the negative responses, and the reason we were able to do that with full honesty is because there just wasn't many. It was really, really positive. It was over 75% of people who were achieving everything that they hoped that they would achieve with an MBA. And I think a lot of people were surprised. How can just a qualification change my life this much? But we see it happen, and it's awesome. So there's a few more questions in here. I'll just finish off this quick list, which is surrounding networking. So just talking about networking opportunities at AIB, I believe, Chauntelle, you would have heard about some events we've been conducting. If you want to talk about that for a tiny bit.
Yeah. So we hold regular networking events. So here in Australia, we do them in most of the capital cities. We travel around. We hold the networking event. So it is for prospective students, current students, and alumni. So they are great networking events. We have some really fantastic key speakers as well. So we do those regularly. We've also held networking events in Canada as well, as we have quite a big cohort in Canada. So that's the official networking events that we do hold regularly. So a lot of students find those really great. But I guess with online study, another thing that is different to your traditional face-to-face on-campus study is that in your class for any particular subject, you'll have students from all over the world, which you're not going to have that same experience when you are studying face-to-face. So that in itself is a fantastic networking opportunity. The classes are quite small, the class sizes. So when you attend an online webinar, there's only generally 30 people in each class for a subject, as opposed to, a theatre full of hundreds of students at an online university, at a face-to-face university. So that is one very big difference. So with each subject in each class, you will also have WhatsApp and Facebook groups. So you can, and they're quite popular with our students, so you can, communicate, you can form friendships, you can help each other, and it's a great networking tool as well. Yeah.
I have heard good things about people who have transferred from local universities. They're like, it's kind of boring networking with people just in the same city. Like I could do that myself, Whereas obviously hearing about people from New Zealand, the Caribbean, the USA, Canada, Australia, yeah, no, it's definitely a bit of a wider perspective going on there. Someone's asking about some of the tools for study. So do we have a recommendation on what kind of hardware to use? Sorry, not software. We do sort of provide mostly Microsoft products, predominantly Microsoft. So your student account is a Microsoft account. So I love Apple laptops, but you'll probably have less issues if you're using something from Microsoft. But it all works. People have even done the lion's share of their study on their phone. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. If you do have any problems, go to Student Central. They've seen everything. So definitely no stress with that. Looks like there's a few more questions flowing in here. Can you please give me some more information about the leadership subject? Definitely can. If you're sort of starting off with your MBA, I would say it's a great way to start. It does kind of ease you into study. It's a bit of a segue into some of the harder material that gets a bit more complex. It's primarily reflective. So definitely before you start having a think about what your leadership style is. The amount of people who have started the MBA and I ask them like, oh, how would you describe your leadership style before you jump into leadership? And they have no answer for me. It's a little bit comical, but obviously that's what the subject is for, so no judgment. I would probably say it's definitely nice to have a bit of buffer if it's been 10 years plus since you studied, to just reflect on your leadership style before you start moving into some more serious content. Not to say that leadership is a cinch. It's not a cakewalk. It's not too easy, but it's definitely something I would assume that most people doing an MBA would be pretty familiar with. So if you're stressed about it, don't be. So one final question on the pre-registered questions that I might get Chauntelle to start off with. I can probably give some context here as well, but they've asked how or what is the best way to sort of circumvent the disconnect when transitioning from face-to-face learning to online learning. So I think we've got a pretty definitive answer, that the person asking this question might not have studied online recently because it has changed significantly. I know online study, 20 years ago might have been taboo, but it's a completely different experience now. And I think people probably find that there's more face-to-face in the online study than there is when you're actually, on a campus. But Chauntelle, would you say there's a big difference these days, or what would you say would be better?
Absolutely. So online learning has changed a lot, I guess, especially since COVID. I mean, AIB have been doing it for a lot longer than most other institutions. So our learning portal is really great. It's interactive. It is, I think it's more face-to-face than face-to-face learning now, to be honest. Like I just mentioned, there are only 30 people in your webinar in each class, not hundreds of people. We do have a lot of the different groups you can be a part of. And most importantly, we have so much more support. You can book an appointment or email your lecturer at any time, in each subject. I don't know about you, but I know years ago when I went to uni face to face, I didn't speak to my lecturers very often, if at all. And I think, the support that we offer and everything that you can get online is probably more interactive. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I mean, I know I sort of touched on that earlier when I said, when I studied at a campus university, it was weirdly impersonal. You would have expected it to be the opposite. But if things went wrong and I pulled out of a subject, no one knew. Like no difference. Whereas if things are going wrong, we reach out to you. We want to make sure that everything's okay and what we can do to help. So that actually leads me on to this question that I've just received, which is a rough one, but an important question. How do I get back up when my last subject didn't go so well? And I think the short answer to that is to first of all identify what it is that was missing. If it's something on the AIB side, please reach out to your enrollment advisor. We have so many support methods these days that go to really sort of at every single turn of submitting your assessment, there to help you out. So even if it's just the teacher telling you how to do this, what direction to take, exactly whether your idea of an assessment is right or whether it needs to change completely. Some people just need to scrap it all and just start again. And having someone who's going to be marking your assessment, who even wrote some of the subject content, giving you feedback, that's incredibly valuable. But the actual writing itself is time consuming. Obviously you need to go through modules and webinars and things like that. And I know I said earlier, you can sort of expedite that process. No, you don't need to read it every page of the textbook and memorize it, listen to every podcast and, memorize all the module stuff and do every activity. No, you don't need to do that. But, like I mentioned, when you're writing an assessment, you don't need to stare at a blank screen and struggle through all the referencing and writing it all yourself and not getting any help. We have the tools that you would expect from 2024 study. Please use them. And if you don't know how to use them, talk to the Learning Resources Officer, Jack. He will teach you how to use them. That's his whole role. He'll be thrilled that you booked it at a time. And speak to your enrollment advisor if you're confused. They will book you in with the right person. If you don't know who you should be speaking to, just say your problem and we'll help you out. If there is a tech issue or, you're not sure how to sort of study it on your commute, talk to Student Central about getting it on your phone or getting the audio version of the modules. Definitely speak to us. Otherwise, if it's not on the AIB side, which it won't always be, it may be that we need to sort of help you out with a booking with a learning resources officer or an academic skills advisor to sort of say, okay, how much time are you spending? Does it need to be more, or are you spending too much time on a certain thing and it needs to be less? So Messing with your schedule is always tricky, but that may be the key to passing. But I guess if I was going to give you any advice of how can I make sure this next subject is a successful one, speak to us. The only reason, not the only reason, but the largest reason that we see people having trouble is they're not speaking to us. I guarantee we have something for you. Just make sure that we know you need it. That's probably the primary response I would give you. Chauntelle, I probably should have thrown that to you. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, that was a really important point you made at the end there, Arlen. Just reach out to us. So the enrolment advisors are here for you. Sometimes, not actually sometimes, a lot of the times, we find students sometimes just need to have a chat with us and explain what's been happening in their life and how that's affected their study. And, we're here to listen. We're here to talk it through with you. And then once we sort of understand where you're at, we can make a plan to move forward to help and support you to set you up for success. That's what we're here for. But if you don't keep those lines of communication open, then we can't help you. So I think that's where AIB is very different, is that we've got so much support here. And so, yeah, definitely utilize it. That's what we're here for. And yeah, I think that's a very, very important point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a reason you came to us. Let's make sure that you're actually taking advantage of all this stuff that we put out for you. So there are a couple more questions. It seems like we're winding down. Let's ask you about events. So there is a schedule that you can definitely check out. I believe the next networking event is in Melbourne. Chauntelle, you could probably confirm. When is that?
It is in Melbourne. It is in, I believe, 2 weeks. I think from memory, it's about the 18th of October, roughly. Yeah.
Fair enough. You'll have to excuse us. We've had a lot on. It's been a lot of networking events. So, other than the networking events, definitely reach out to your classmates, on the Facebook groups, the WhatsApp groups, all of that kind of stuff. Network with your fellow peers at all times. Strongly recommend doing that. But when you finish your MBA, you will be invited to join the alumni network, and there are plenty of opportunities there as well. It's quite large. We've been around for a long time, and you will get something out of it. But the other couple of questions here, just talking about the MBA 2. So when you finish your MBA, there are quite a few people who maybe picked some electives, and whilst they're happy with them, they wanted to pick more. So it's like, great, I did all the finance stuff I needed to do. I'm going to be a CFO with my MBA that's specializing in finance. Brilliant. But, it wasn't the fun part of the MBA. I wanted to learn more about marketing because I think, a lot of people say that marketing is the most fun. Whether you agree is another story. You might be sick of marketing. I'm not sure who's watching this, but you can come back and do those subjects. So if you want to do a double specialization, we'll do you one better, and we will transfer all of your core subjects over again to treat you as a new master's degree. You'll do the electives that you're missing. For example, I've done finance, now I'm going to do marketing. Then finish it off with a second project surrounding marketing, and that's just 4 courses, and you get a whole second master's. So it's not just a double specialization, it's a whole second master's. So definitely come back and do some extra subjects if you want to really pimp out your resume. If you want it to look pretty stylish, then having 2 masters is on there, just from an extra 4 courses is excellent. Speak to your enrollment advisor about that. Did I miss anything on the MBA too, Chauntelle?
No, it is becoming a lot more popular with students. So yeah, generally it's just 4 subjects. So you get to choose either a specialization, which is 3 electives in a particular area, or you can do a general as your MBA 2. So then you can choose a mixture again of 3 electives, and then you do another project at the end. Yeah, it's amazing. I love the way you said pimp out your resume. Yeah, it would definitely look really great. And yeah, we're finding more and more students are actually taking on the option of that MBA too.
Brilliant. So I've just received confirmation. 24th of October is going to be the Melbourne networking event. Just for those who were interested in attending. Someone's also asked about LinkedIn Learning. So this comes along with your massive suite of software and subscriptions that you get as an AIB student. LinkedIn Learning is amongst them, and you access it via your Microsoft account, which is your student account. That goes the same for everything else. Grammarly, all that stuff that you may be paying for, Microsoft 365, Zoom, all those things. If you're paying for them, stop paying for them. You get that with your enrollment. Don't double up. And if you do sort of need a bit more help than that, I realize that's fairly high level advice. Please reach out to Student Central to say, oh, my LinkedIn Learning account, I can't access it, or something similar to that. And they will help you. Even if they need to get on the phone with you and share their screen and show you, they will. They're very helpful people, and they're very friendly. So just the last question I've got here. I won't take up too much of your time. I realize this was meant to be a lunchtime Q&A. Hopefully you have an hour for lunch. But someone's asking about graduation. So tell me more about the day. It's really a sight to behold. I can barely describe it. It's so exciting. It's such a massive event, and we've been holding them in different places. So if you're in Canada, don't worry, you don't have to fly all the way to Australia. That we have, had our last graduation in Canada, in Toronto, and we do have graduations in Australia. Obviously, the last few were in Adelaide. I believe, the next one, maybe in a different city. However, regardless of where they are, there is always a special guest speaker that you definitely want to hear from. It's always a big name. You get the CEO, all the academics, everybody congratulating you. There's a pretty massive audience, and it's so hard to describe, but it's such a special event seeing people achieve their dreams. And these aren't people fresh out of high school, like I said. These are parents, walking up on stage, and you see their kids being like, yes, and it's really something special to behold. And seeing the network that people have, seeing that the MBA isn't a challenge that you take on alone, seeing all your family and your support networks, and seeing all the different people, who had a whole network of people egging them on to get through their masters, it's always a big, big deal. And we're happy to make it the big deal that it is. So we don't care how much this massive event costs. We really want to make it special, and I've never been to one that hasn't been epic. It's just an excellent affair. Chauntelle, you would have been to one or two. What did you think?
Yes, I was totally not expecting. I remember when I went to my first graduation when I started at AIB many years ago. It's very emotional. I cried. It is amazing, just after all of the hard work, seeing people celebrating, their achievement and how it has changed their life. And the valedictorians, the stories that they tell of their journey, watching all of the students with their families, or like you said, the people that supported them through the journey. It's just, yeah, amazing. Unexpectedly, it's just it's a fantastic event. So, yeah, it's just, I don't really know how else to explain that.
It's so hard to describe, right? There's not a dry eye in the house. But I think that covers all the questions, especially as we're starting to run out of time. So we will wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming to this and learning a bit more about the MBA and asking questions about how to succeed in this massive qualification. It's awesome to see people, coming to show interest in really expediting the process of becoming a master's graduate and going to one of those graduations and being that person on stage with their family rooting for them. No, it's really amazing to see. If you haven't studied in a while, make us hold us accountable to coming good on that promise of that motivational speech. Get in touch, send an email to your enrollment advisor, and see what they've got for you. They'll definitely talk you around, because it's an incredible thing to achieve. So thank you for coming. I will let you all get back to your days. I realize it's lunchtime, and hopefully you managed to eat something in that time without listening to me yabber on about how amazing an MBA is. But I will leave you to it, and I will call it there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.